o'clock, 7 o'clock. They will come and give you a whole lot of instructions. Do this, do that. If you don't do this, we can't do anything. I was here last month. They said I should go and gazette my name. For a whole 5 weeks, I went at this place, Accra. Today I went for it. I managed to reach here before 8 o'clock, and I'm still here. They said they are coming to take the elderly people to go and do it for them. Still, up till now, we are here. It
must be very, very frustrating. I mean,
very, very. That is too stressful. The government should do something about it to let the old ones have their peace. We are very, very much stressful. We don't know what to do. If you made a little mistake, then you pass through all this problem. What is it? We are suffering. We are suffering too much. The youngs, the old, whoever, we are all suffering here. We are just talking. Because if you say something, they say that computer is slow. The system is very slow. For how long will we be here waiting for the system? If there is any alternative, the government should do it for us, so that we should be free from this stressfulness. We are too much annoyed. Actually, we are not happy at all. We are not happy.
So, you had some of the individuals who have come here, and a number of them all seated here at the Elwak Sports Stadium. And so there are those who want to make corrections.
Okay, all right.
Some of them who
so that's my colleague, Joseph Akableda. He's still at the Elwak Sports Stadium. He'll be bringing us more details on that in a subsequent bulletin. But let's take you back to the Dromankese Paul Road story, where the DC for the Nkransa North District, Dr. Peter Oseifosu, is joining me live with more update. Doc, thank you so much for your time.
Miss, I know that's why they say we should register. And you know, we bunch. I know last week the court I was in Karana to we come because if you are going to withdraw money, you can't withdraw money. So we like present day our talk. So we come last week, people were bunch, we will go back. So today that we came back to see what you can do for us.
Okay, Bianca, it's no more some best that some blocking. Come on, train Mukakra, Sinebea, be moved to me register Ghana card, no, BBR to me to ye.
Is it NIA, right? They should maybe get our cards, like the people that have maybe registered and then they have not gotten their cards. They should get their card before the deadline should be. Or better still, maybe if they can do something about the extension to maybe next year, so that everybody will get his or a card before this thing will be done. Yeah. So I'm just putting on the NIA and then the other authorities to extend the day so that everybody will get.
Right. Now, the minority in Parliament has also been speaking on this. In fact, the minority leader has suggested that perhaps the NCA should wait until the NIA completes their ID registration process before they set deadlines for their SIM card registration process. Let's hear from them.
It is not the obligation nor the responsibility of any Ghanaian to work to have and to be denied a Ghana card. The responsibility is that of government to grant the citizens the Ghana card with ease and without hindrance and without any problem. We are not saying that don't use Ghana card. We are saying that complete the process well. Ensure that every Ghanaian deserving to have a Ghana card has a Ghana card. Then you can use it as basis for election and as basis for SIM registration. But when you are not able to make that card available, don't hold me responsible for your inefficiency and irresponsibility in providing me with a Ghana card as a public good. Every Ghanaian is entitled to it. It is for a Kufuor and his government to provide it. Every day we are queuing for it. reduce the queues, clear the queues, make sure we have it. And when we have it, we will use it for SIM registration, and you can use it for purpose of election. But where we are not certain, as we are not certain this evening, that every Ghanaian has it, because I see a queue every day in Tamale. There is a queue here in Wadawale and Nelego. You cannot say that something you ought to provide me that you have failed to provide, I should suffer the consequence of it.
So I don't know. I try to think of this as, you go to a restaurant to order food. You go to a restaurant to eat. Now, the restaurant wants to take a picture of their customers. So they say, look, all women should sit on one side. All men should sit on another. So you, the customer, you oblige. You sit on one side. Then the orders come out and they are wrong. So the restaurant says, oh, we are sorry, we got it wrong. We want to do it again. Okay, so this time women should sit on this side, men should sit on that side. And this time we'll get it right. And you haven't eaten, you are there to eat. Then you get up, you follow what they are saying. But of course, some people are not able to find their chairs and all of that. And then the restaurant says, if you don't sit down in the next 5 minutes, we'll punish you. You, the restaurant that's trying to take your picture, you will punish us, the customers, if we don't sit down in the next 5 minutes. That is similar to what SIM card users are experiencing as the government tries to re-register citizens. And they want to do it using the Ghana card only. But the Ghana card has problems. Yet there's a deadline. Well, there have been several deadlines which have been moved several times. Now there is one for the end of September. It will not be moved, but already punitive measures are being implemented. Today we want to have the conversation from another angle. We want to look at the process so far. We want to understand the rationale of it. Why is government trying to do this? What has worked? What needs to be done better? And is there any value in extending the deadline one more time when earlier extensions did not work? In the studio, we have Selorm Branttie. Selorm, of course, is with Imani, and he has been talking on this since we started the conversation sometime last week. Always giving some very, very useful insights. Selorm, it's good to see you. It's been a while since you came to the studio, isn't it?
Yeah, Kojo, it's good to see you, and good morning to your listeners too. Definitely been a while.
Wonderful. Sam George is on his way. He'll be joining us in the studio shortly. We believe he's quite close by, actually. He'll be here very soon. He, of course, is on the Communications Committee of Parliament, has been speaking on these matters and engaging or attempting to engage the Communications Minister on social media with a few interesting comments of his own. All right. So you see, you'll notice how I've positioned the conversation today, that there's a bit of room for devil's advocate, because I think we have to understand that there is a noble aim here, even if the implementation is problematic. So I want us to start from that position and try and figure out what is going well and what can be done better. And more importantly, whether there is any value in extending this deadline. Let's start with what is going well.
I think that for all intents and purposes, having every SIM subscriber registered in a central database, which can be verified by various independent authorities, is a very, very smart thing to do. Actually, it is not just smart, but it's prudent, because digitization and digital tools for communication enhance business activity. But in the same vein, they also allow for criminal elements to take advantage of the situation and then the advantages that are in therein, and use them to swindle and deceive people. And mostly in the case of fraud or cyber fraud, for example, this can have very devastating implications. not only on private individuals, but corporate organizations and the country at large. Beyond just the effects of crime, you're also talking about embarrassment to people, etc. So there are many aspects of cybercrime that's tying a SIM subscriber to a database or a data point, which is the person's name, probably the person's location, occupation, etc., is really, really critical and important. That is why it is done by the banks. That is why it's being done by other organizations, because your SIM card is an extension of your digital identity, or probably one of the most important tools of your digital identity. So the objective to do that, or the objective to have that SIM registration done, is actually prudent.
Okay. We've just been joined by Mr. Sam George, who is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. He's also on the Parliament's Communications Committee, if I'm correct. Very good. Mr. George, always a pleasure to see you. Good morning and thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure, Kojo.
All right. So we've started from a certain position this morning. Because we know that people like yourself and Selorm have been very vocal in pointing out what's not going right. Okay, so today we want to start the conversation from a different tack, if you will. We want to first understand what's going well, then we'll talk about what could be better, and then we will discuss the concept of this deadline and the punitive measures. So we've started off with what's going well. And we've just heard, and I love how brief he was, Mr. Selorm Branttie, on what's going well. I'd love to hear your take on that as well before we proceed.
Well, I think that on what's going well, the whole concept of a re-registration is something that, as a minority, we are not opposed to. And that is evidenced by the fact that even though we hold the considered view that there is no legal framework currently in our country to back this re-registration drive, especially in the manner it is being done, as an opposition or a minority, we have not opposed the re-registration.
Right.
What we have called for are modalities to make it user-friendly, because any drive to clean up our SIM subscriber registry is welcome. We've seen, and Parliament has been involved in quite a number of investigations. Our committee has worked with the Cybersecurity Authority on a number of investigations involving people using SIM cards for the perpetration of fraud. And as such, it's important that we establish a correct database of SIM subscribers. And so I would want to limit myself to what's good, because I could easily delve into what's not going right.
Well, we're coming to the
on the back of having a clean register, because you may want to do the right thing, but doing it wrongly will produce a negative result, because the whole concept, the whole idea of a clean register is something we're all for. And I've used your platform. The last time I was on this platform, I urged people who have managed to acquire the Ghana card to go ahead and register. I haven't stayed away from that. Okay, I haven't registered for principled reasons, which we'll come to subsequently. But ultimately, the call has been that if you have the Ghana card, if your business and work will allow you, go to the MTN office, go to the Vodafone office, Airtel to go office, and get your SIM card registered. We hope and pray that a lot of the modalities that we are going to discuss will be adopted. We won't have this chaos we're having. But for where we sit, I honestly believe that a SIM registry database that is authentic and credible is necessary for us as a country. As to if this process will deliver that, given the modalities that have been employed, we hold a considered view again, and it's debatable, that ab initio, even before they complete the process, the registry has been compromised.
All right.
Just a curious question, Kojo.
Yes, yeah.
Has your SIM been blocked?
No.
Okay. Even though you haven't re-registered?
No.
All right.
Interesting. Bit of interesting. But as we understand it, former President Mahama had his SIM card blocked. This is what we are learning from his interview on TV3.
Yes, one of his numbers was blocked, and this is a number he had registered. He had complied with the process, but then we will come to that again in what is going wrong, because they went to his residence, took his biometrics, took all the necessary data, linked it to the Ghana card, yet it was blocked. And there's a simple reason for that. They're not using the right app. They're using an offline app, and the integrity of that app is questionable. And a lot of people, and not just him, Honorable Muntaka, the chief whip, yesterday he told me his MTN number was blocked. And so and this is after he had gone through the hassle of registering it. And so they've asked him to come to re-register. He said he won't go. They should take the line and block it and do what they want to do. Because, I mean, the inconvenience of people having to go through this chaos and then your own inefficiencies deprives them of the value of all of that inconvenience. And you say they should repeat it. I mean, and then you block them on top of it.
Okay, let's go into what could be done better. And I suppose at this point, let's state what the process is. This is what the government of Ghana wants you to do in order to re-register your SIM. First of all, the government of Ghana wants you to get a Ghana card if you don't already have one. They want the Ghana card to be the only document with which you can register your SIM. That has come in for some criticism. Then, when you use this Ghana card as the only document, and by the way, the reason given for the Ghana card being the only accepted document is because it has everything they need. So it's got your biometric data, it's got your identity, it's linked to an address, and it's also linked to your tax records. So it's got everything that they need there. So that should be the only document. Okay. Now, once you have that, you're supposed to now go to your telco. Give them this document that has everything that they need, including your biometric data. Then you are supposed to give them your biometric data again. At the end of that process, your SIM card will be registered to you. Now, some would say that's prudent. They are checking, double checking, triple checking to ensure that you are you. So that at least at one point, there is no uncertainty about your identity. Why is that being criticized, Selorm?
So, first of all, the fact that the Ghana card is the sole prerequisite is problematic because it is not the only biometric form of identification in this country.
But it is the only one that's linked to other things like tax and address and so forth.
That's all well and good, but in every system you always have to have a redundancy, or you always have to have a fallback plan. If for any reason the data from the Ghana card is not accessible, it means that you really cannot verify any kind of information about somebody. Forget the fact that it's linked to so many things. If the main source or the nodal point is not available, there's nothing else to do. A lot of Ghanaians, especially those above 18, would have had, there's a high probability that quite a lot of Ghanaians above 18 would have one or another form of identity that is biometric. A voter's ID, what do you call it, a SNIT card, what's the other one? A driver's license or a passport. And all of these have been, are being linked. So if that even begs the question, why didn't they just decide to then use these data points to link an already existing subscriber who, mind you, has already registered their SIM card using a biometric source of data? Why didn't they do it in the back end and then just send you a message if there was an inconsistency with maybe your Ghana card details and any of the other card details? Or if they, why didn't they make a rule, for example? This is what you would normally do if you have millions of people. You would make a rule that, okay, if the person has two different sources of ID that's synchronized, then we can safely triangulate and say this is the particular person. So if your voter ID details and your Ghana card match, your voter ID details and your passport match, your voter ID details and your driving license match, then, okay, we can be sure that Kojo Yankson is Kojo Yankson, or Selorm Branttie is Selorm Branttie. Then from there, you could just say that, okay, this person can then be registered or put on this new regime. It's because you then have two different data points pointing to the same person. And if the person, you could say that the person should bring the Ghana card details later to update. That is what the banks are doing. And nobody's complaining about it because the banks, you'll be there, they'll tell you that you have to bring your card to update your details. So you just update the details. If they had done it like that, a lot of all this chaos would not exist. But now you are saying people should get the Ghana card, which in itself is a logistical nightmare. I mean, you've heard some of the people that in your Vox Pop, you've heard their opinions and the difficulty that is in obtaining the Ghana card. And we are even in the urban areas here in Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi, so it's even easier. If you are even located more remotely in a more rural setting, it is even a more arduous task to be able to get the Ghana card. You've made it a sole prerequisite for re-registering. And then we forget that the Ghana card regime is a completely different regime, or what they intend to do has different timelines, different objectives, different logistical structures from that of this SIM re-registration, which we are rushing on everybody's neck and saying that you should do it at a particular point in time, forgetting that the core dependency of this particular process is a process itself that has its own problems. So if those problems haven't been solved, why do you then make this rely on such a problematic situation in the first place? Then you go ahead to say that once you present your Ghana card, you still have to do a biometric check. And this biometric check is the most amusing aspect of the whole scenario. There is nowhere in this world where a standardized fingerprint taking exercise is done with random phone cameras. Anything from what do you call it, a 5-year-old Infinix with a 1 or 2 megapixel camera to the latest Samsung S22 Ultra with an 108 megapixel camera. You are not going to get consistent data because of lighting, because of the type of camera, whether there are smudges on the lens, etc. Because that is not how standardized fingerprint biometric data is taken. So that alone in itself makes the whole exercise moot. Are you taking just Ghana card details, or are you taking the fingerprint details? Now, this is where it's even very problematic, because if you were even just doing the *400 to link your details with the Ghana card, that would have been an excellent first step. And then the rest of it could be sorted on the back end. They match your Ghana card details to any existing details. Once there's a match, then they say that your registration is done. That would have been the simplest thing to do, and that would have been the smartest thing to do. Then we add one crazy process which has no meaning, no bearing, and no ability to cross-check any other database. Because when I'm doing that semi-registration exercise, I can take your hand and then take a picture of it. How will any system know? We are collecting fraudulent data. We are collecting data that is useless, data that cannot be used or checked out against any database, and data that can actually, perpetrate fraud. So the same system that you are saying that you are using to prevent fraud and terrorism, etc., I can game it by just simply taking a picture of somebody else's hand. And there's no way anybody will know, because the thing that is taking the picture is not a magician.
Mr. Sam George, let me bring you in, still on the process. In response to the issues that people were having to queue in the sun and all of this, government decided to introduce an app, make life a bit easier. If you have a passport, you are abroad, you can still, register your SIM. Some would say that this is responsiveness. They are trying to make the thing work. They have the best intentions, so they are trying to provide solutions to all the issues that are being raised. Surely that's a good thing.
Again, I go back to the earlier maxim I used, that if you do the right thing the wrong way, you achieve a negative result. The app is actually, I'd say it's the forte of Selorm. Selorm has really done a lot of work on the app. The point must be made that the NIA has its app for integration. You've seen integration done by SNIT. You didn't see all pensioners in this country and all SNIT payers asked to come and queue at SNIT offices to take their fingerprints or verify them. You've seen DVLA do integration. You didn't see all trotro drivers and taxi drivers asked to queue up at DVLA offices to do that linkage. The fact must be established here, and it's been proven with the blocking of persons who register their SIM cards, what I'm about to say, that app has been inefficient in the work it ought to do. Because don't forget that this self-service app that we're being told about is an extension of the app that the MNOs are using. It's literally the same service provider. There's one that you call an enterprise solution, which had been given to the MNOs to do, and then there's the the individual version, which is what the minister promised to release and delayed per her own timeline. And I'm wondering what sanctions will apply on her for not meeting her deadline for 24 days. And even after 24 days of delay, as we speak, the app is not available on iOS. So if you use Apple, you can't download the app. If you also use Android, where it's available on the Play Store, after paying the money, you are not able to complete the process. So that in itself is fraught with challenges. But then the reality here is a lot of the data that is captured by that app, even when you use the enterprise solution version, which was what was given to the MNOs, where they went to, let's say, high-profile persons and corporate entities to do the registrations for them in their premises, you realize that a lot of the data was captured offline. Now, given the integrity of the app, when they go back to try and do the synchronization with the NI database, large sets of data have just refused or have not been able to synchronize. And that's how come persons who went through that process of registration are still being told that when they do the BCAP check, they're being told that their app SIM cards have not been registered. It's problematic that, and I've said this severally, that we're in this challenge simply because the ministry decided to engage in procurement. That's what it is.
Beautiful.
It's about procurement. The whole process that has been designed is procurement driven, not service driven. Selorm has eloquently described what should have been. This policy, and let me pause here and serve notice that the next NDC government will be tasked with the challenge of having to clean up this data that is being generated, because you cannot rely, given the threat of terror and crime within the country, you cannot rely on what is being done. Because he's pointed out to you.
Also come and do procurement?
No. You don't need to do procurement. That's what I'm saying to you. That the NIA, which is the custodian by law of all government's biometric data, which is the national data, and by law is the only agency that is authorized to capture biometrics in the manner in which and store it in the manner in which it is being done, has an app that is already in place that other agencies have used. And I just always use this example that, do you think, for the life of you, that the minister responsible for information technology in the UK would go on the BBC and give a national address and say he or she is reluctantly extending a deadline for all British citizens in the UK, 70 million of them, to go and queue at O2 and EE offices to go and re-register a SIM card? Do you think that will happen? I mean, for the life of you, would you see that happen? It won't, because you see, this process is actually, and I made a point yesterday in another interview that the minister does not regulate the citizens of this country. She regulates the telcos through the regulator, the NTA. And so her directives should be to the players in the industry she regulates, not the populace. So her directive on this SIM card registration should have been to the MNOs, giving them the responsibility to engage their clientele, which is us, in this registration process. The MNOs know how, when they wanted to switch our SIM cards from 4G to 3G, from 3G to 4G, they know how they went about it. There were no massive queues. And like I said, Selorm has laid it out. If the MNOs were tasked to doing this, and they had done synchronization with the NIA database, they would have identified that Selorm Branttie used his passport to register his SIM card. The passport database has already been integrated with the NIA database. So it means that on the AFIS system the AFIS system, basically the fingerprint system, that the passport office used, that data has been synchronized with the NIA database. So what MTN, if he had an MTN team, would have done, would have been to run the AFIS, and again, when he registered for his Ghana card, he gave a phone number. So they have a phone number on the NIA database. So they would check that MTN phone number. Oh, that's the same number that is registered to Selorm Branttie on our network. They pick the AFIS data from the biometric data from the AFIS system of the passport office and match with the AFIS data that is held on the NIA. If those fingerprints match, boom, Selorm Branttie's phone is automatically linked and registered. He has no business going anywhere. He gets a message telling him your SIM card has been duly integrated or whatever, or registered. Sam George doesn't have a Ghana card. So when they try to do that, I also registered with my passport. When they try to match, there will be no data sitting at the NIA. So then I would receive a message from my telco telling me that I need to come in within a time frame. And then the telcos can then choose to then do a segregation and give timelines and say, Mr. George, can you appear anytime in the next 2 weeks? So it's a batch by batch thing. I walk into any MTN office within a 2-week period. There are no queues there. I present them my Ghana card because, again, there'll be no pressure on the NIA. I could easily walk to an NIA office, get my Ghana card, present them that Ghana card, and then that integration is done. So you will then realize that you have fewer people trying to get the Ghana card. You won't have this mad rush. There are people today who are queuing up at LWAC who shouldn't be there. Why? These are persons who've already registered. They have a Ghana card issued to them. They've misplaced their Ghana card. The fact that you've misplaced your physical card does not mean that your data set is lost. So then the telco should be able to act for inaction. Should they go and whip Professor Kenatefa and say, give me a card before? They can't. So you're saying that once the person has gone through the process, whether the person has a physical card or not, the data is there. You can access that data. But to even show you the problem here is the fact that, and I'll wrap up there, is when you do the stuff for, is it 400 or 404? When you do that, if the app was actually connected and doing any real verification, when you do that short code and you enter your Ghana card details, the standard thing with any MySQL, SQL 101 class, is that once you enter the primary field, all the secondary data will come out. So once you enter the Ghana card number, you don't have to then enter your name, your date of birth. But because the app is not querying the database, even when you enter it, you have to enter all of those details individually. Because normally once you just put in that Ghana card, it should populate the entire form for you. But because there's nothing going on, no verification is going on. So you are putting Ghanaians through a chaotic situation. You're not doing any verification. It's driven by procurement.
So, Mr. George, you've sort of simplified the issues and the solutions, really. But you have the opportunity, you're in Parliament, Parliament is on recess, but we know that the committees do work. Have you attempted inviting the Ministry of Communications or the Communications Minister, who herself is also a member of Parliament?
Outside of the committee has tried to get the whole committee, because again, the committees tried not to be partisan in the nature of our work. In fact, we're very nationalistic in there. And persons on the other side of the committee, in the majority side of the committee, are also affected by this. We've not been able to get consensus from both sides to have the summons yet. But our belief is that before the end of this month, we would have issued a summons to the ministry and the NCA to appear before the committee, because the committee has its responsibilities to do. We, as a minority, have made the point that if we are unable to get consensus as a committee because partisan considerations come in, we're also serving notice that, as we did last year in November, when we had requested for the NCA's annual reports, because the NCA had been in default of submitting its annual reports to Parliament. The law says that every year they must submit their annual reports. As far back as 2015, the last report we had gotten from the NCA was in 2015. 2016 all the way to 2021 had not been delivered. We had been asking for it and asking for it. The minister refused to bring it. When she appeared before us as a committee to approve her budget for her, we walked her out and refused to approve her budget. It became news. Within 24 hours after we walked her out, she came with 3 reports for 3 years. So it's a possible thing. We've served notice that if she continues along this tangent and refuses to listen to Parliament, and the committee is not everything you want to say, but there are times where the committee has even summoned the NCA and the minister has written to the NCA and told the NCA not to honor the invitation of Parliament. That's how arrogant the minister has been. Yes, there are times we have written to the minister. And when Kennedy Japan was chairman of the committee in the last Parliament, we wrote to the minister. She wrote back to us and said she won't appear. There were times I even we wrote to her and said we wanted to get information on Airtel Tigo, if you remember. And she granted an interview to the media and said she's not under the ambit of Parliament, she won't come. It took Mr. Speaker to intervene and say, look, that's a summon from Parliament. I would allow the members cite you for contempt of Parliament before she showed up. So you have a minister who runs within a setting with a certain attitude. And so we've served notice that if she wants to run down that path, we can assure her this will be the first time Parliament will pass an appropriations bill without an appropriation for a ministry. The Ministry of Communications will block that budget. That budget will not be approved because the budget is the taxpayers' money. You cannot be punishing the taxpayers and expect to enjoy their largesse. There's several issues that are pending. I mean, you write to an agency and the minister will write back to the agency and tell them not to appear. before the ministry. So the parliamentary committee. Wow. It's unfortunate.
Wow. Well, these are things that hopefully we can verify. We'd love to catch a glimpse of some of these letters to understand how appointees are instructing state institutions not to answer to the people.
Absolutely.
We would love to see those. Listen, let's wrap on the issue of the deadline. Again, lots of controversy. The first thing is this. This is perhaps the fourth deadline. If not this is the fourth deadline. In the past, the deadlines have been extended. In spite of that, the problem has not been solved. We still have people queuing for Ghana cards. We still have people queuing to register their SIMs. Problem has not been solved by extending deadlines. So there are some who say, this time around, why extend it again? It's not going to solve the problem. Keep it in place and rather focus on doing what needs to be done so that everyone can meet the deadline. Is that
logistically impossible? Per the rules of how they are planning this whole, or they have run this whole enterprise so far, it's not going to be possible that by September 30th, you would have every Ghanaian who has a SIM card complying with this new re-registration module. I am actually very curious to see what will happen after September 30th. And I dare the minister, I double dare her to go by her own words. And then she will see the kind of chaos that will happen in this country. The reason why I say chaos, I'm not saying it in any kind of physically
you don't want to be
violent
picked up by national security.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I am saying chaos because you are talking about flirting with the fortunes of the service sector, which contributes to more than 45% of our GDP. You are talking about flirting and toying and making a petri dish of the whole digitization agenda, which is being run by the vice president himself and by so many different organizations. You are talking about flirting with our SDGs, these sustainable development goals. You are talking about creating, blocking digital access. You are talking about creating a digital apartheid where people, by virtue of the fact that another institution has not been able to fulfill its obligations, they are being made to pay for it. You are also talking about the fact that there are very huge procurement issues, even related to the applications that are being used. Note that the telcos here who are being blamed for this SIM, the NCA has come out in public to blame the telcos for the inability of people's SIM registrations to take place. But the telcos are only kiosks. They are only outlets. If you are buying a beverage, a soda beverage, and the soda beverage itself has a problem, you don't blame the one who sold it to you. You blame the company that makes the beverage. Now, if you go onto the Google Play Store today, you would see that the app that is being used for the individual exercise self-registration is owned and published by Excel Inc. Limited.
That's a private entity.
Exactly. So if you look, you will see that there are other apps that have been published by this entity and they own all these apps. The NCA has come on record, in public record, to say that they own these apps. Now, there is a big problem here because even the data that is being collected, if it is redundant, first of all, and it is not required, you are not obligated to collect all this data. You should just synchronize with the NIA database. So if this private entities collecting this data, and this private entity's data is so bad that even people who have fulfilled the obligation to register are even having problems, does it not speak to some very serious issues in procurement? And now let me continue here and say that this company doesn't have a website anywhere. This company doesn't have a track record of providing similar services at a national scale anywhere. This company was incorporated in 2020 in the midst of the lockdown. How does this company suddenly get a contract to register more than 15 million or an estimated 25 million SIM cards, or what do you call it, SIM identities, on the blind side of all Ghanaians? How and by what legal basis is this company charging individuals 5 cedis, where even in this particular process of registering this thing, the 5 cedis, sometimes people have to pay twice, triple times and still don't get registered? How does this happen? The NCA is not mandated or it's illegal for the NCA to collect money from individuals. It is illegal for the Ministry of Communication to collect money from individuals. If the NCA says that they own this app, they are acting illegally. If the Ministry of Communication says they own this app, they're acting illegally. If this company says they own this app, by what basis are they charging people for this? These are serious questions that Ghanaians need to ask the minister, and I dare the minister to come and answer these questions and not be sitting quietly in a corner, listening and watching all this chaos unfold while she sits somewhere waiting to foist another deadline on us or give us another arrogant speech about Ghanaians being undisciplined or recalcitrant, when she has been the mother of all of this chaos.
I'm even concerned about the data that this company is collecting. This is biometric data.
We are not even sure whether they are even signed up under standardized data collection methods of ISO. You know that the Ghana card has subscribed to the ISO standards on digital identity management. This company hasn't signed up. We are even not sure whether this company is working with the data protection agency or even has any parameters or any kinds of systems alignment with the data protection agency that protects our data. There are so many details about this app that if we said here would even cause people to panic. But the thing about it is that we have to ask the relevant and critical questions about how people are allowed to just put anybody into intermediate in the valuable data of our valuable data and then put it out there.
Okay.
I was just going to make a final comment, and the final comments are along the line of what Selorm said. A deadline in itself will not fix the problem. The deadlines do not produce the Ghana cards. And national security is minded by this. You see, she tried to block SIM cards 2 days in the last week. The NCA has quietly, they issued a public statement, but when they were receding that decision to the telcos, they did it nicodemously in the quiet of the night. And now they say they are no longer blocking again this week. I joined Selorm to dare the minister to block the SIM cards on the 30th of September. If we have a national security apparatus in this country, they won't allow that to happen. I can state on authority again that the actions of the minister do not just have implications for the service sector, but have implications for Ghana's own conversations with the IMF as we speak. Because our internal revenue generations, the scenarios have been built and sent and considered in the IMF conversation. That this is how much government rakes internally. If you block SIM cards of about 3 million Ghanaians, you're talking about, give or take, about 10 million SIM cards. Those SIM cards, when they are used for phone calls, generate CST revenue. When they are used for data, generate CST revenue. Those who do mobile money generate e-levy. All of those figures are going to drop. As we speak, the Minister for Communication has not engaged with the Ministry of Finance to look at what the effect will be on even the IMF conversation. And that's why I'm saying that the fact that we have a national security apparatus in this country, except they are asleep, they cannot sit back and allow the minister. She's xenophobic. The minister what she's doing is a digital apartheid, and this is xenophobia in the digital space, and you can't allow one person run roughshod. And just read Article 18 of the Constitution and realize that the invulnerability of personal communication is key. And her powers that she thinks she has as administrative powers are regulated by Article 296. This morning at 10:30, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, who is leader of the minority and a former Minister of Communications. In fact, it was under him the LI for SIM card registration was passed. We'll be addressing the country from Parliament at 10:30 this morning, and I believe that we will settle the matters there.
Yeah, thank you both so much for your time with us this morning. Sam George, of course, is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. He is on the Communications Committee of Parliament. Selorm Branttie, of course, is with the think tank Imani and has been speaking on this SIM card registration issue since its inception, really.
Doing the lawsuit.
And the law, oh yes, he's also
signatures.
leading a class action suit against...
This week, at least about 3 or 4 suits are going to hit the court.
So yeah, you can follow them both on social media, see what they're up to when it comes to this matter. But here's what we are up to. In just a few moments, our friends from Fidelity have some great news for you. Stay tuned.